All right, folks, 3% of all Mormons are African American, yet 9% of the converts to Mormonism are African American. But they have a very long, troubled history of the issue of race. My next guest, who is ex-Mormon, Archen Bach, joins us right now, and she was told, you can't marry somebody white. She joins us now from American Fork, Utah. Glad to have you on the show. So you were actually told that by church officials?
Yes.
So were you engaged with someone? Were you dating somebody, or were you just inquiring as to who you can marry?
So all of the above. So I joined the church when I was 18, and it's big to get married in the temples when you're Mormon. But the problem is that they were teaching that they're white, males not to marry black people, or anybody not to marry outside their race. They didn't want blacks and black people and white people mixing because they said black people were cursed.
So this was actual teachings where you were going to temple?
Yes.
And when was this? How recent was this?
So 1990 is when I joined, but the teaching is still the same, that black people are cursed and that black people and white people should have mixed. And they said that was because of the curse of Cain. Because Cain and Abel, when Cain killed Abel, he received the curse. And the curse is put on black people from Cain. We're descendants of Cain.
Okay. So when did you inquire as to who you could marry?
They told me. So when I was 18 and I joined, of course, I'm dating age. And so I'm trying
Okay, hold on. You joined when you're 18. How long ago was that?
Long time ago. I'm 51.
Got it. All right. So when did you leave the church? And when did you inquire about who you could marry? And when did you leave the church?
Okay, so I left the church probably 2016 is when I really left. But when it's a culture, when you join when you're 18, you join the church. I even went on an LDS mission. And so when you're dating, they tell you who you're supposed to be dating. You need to date other members of the church so you can be married in the temple. Only other members can be married in the temple. Well, the thing about that is, sure, you could get married in the temple, but they said that I needed to find a black man. But there wasn't a lot of black people in the church. Actually, there was no black people in the church where I was. Even on my mission, there was no black males. So, I did marry a black male. He was a member of the church, but we didn't get married in the temple. And that marriage didn't last.
Do you believe that the Mormon Church continues to have a problem with race?
Absolutely.
How so?
Well, 2016, I finally realized they weren't going to learn. They weren't going to learn. So joining at 18, I have an 18-year-old mind. So 2016, I have a different mind. And so when President Trump became president, then I was able to see really for sure how people really thought. A lot of things were said to my face, but not as strong as it was in 2016. They didn't care. They cared before, kind of like, maybe I shouldn't say anything, or maybe I should say it this way. God deemed it so. But 2016, they did not care at all.
Gotcha. Questions from my panel. Rebecca, you first.
Okay, so I have a few questions, not just with your particular experience, but what even drew you into the Mormon Church, especially considering that one of the tenets of Mormon theology up until the 70s, black folks couldn't get into heaven according to Mormon theology, or that righteous black folks in the afterlife would somehow become white because of the curse of Cain and curse of Ham. What attracted you to the Mormon Church at 18, and what caused you to stay up until 2016?
Good question. So you have to think, so I'm 18, I'm from San Antonio, Texas, which is a Bible Belt. So I grew up, going to a black church. Well, I had a bunch of questions. And where I grew up, you can't ask questions. You just do what you're told, you mind your elders. But I had a car accident and I wanted to know what would happen if I were to die. And everyone just kept telling me, God will provide, God will provide. Well, I met some more missionaries, and they gave me different answers. They said, well, this is what will happen when you die, and a lot of love bombing. But what people don't understand is Mormons had 6 discussions. They don't teach you that you're going to be white in the afterlife. They do not teach you about the curse of Cain. They don't teach you any racism. They teach you 6 discussions that talk about Jesus Christ, Joseph Smith, and God. It's later on that you start learning the other things. Well, by then you're already in it. You think that maybe something's wrong with you. You're taught not to question God, that God knows more than you, and that other people know more than you. And as an 18-year-old kid, that made sense to me. I didn't like it, but little by little, you start hearing different things. I went on a mission, thinking that's what God wanted me to do, and then I guess it's like a bad marriage. You try to take the good stuff and go with the bad. You're thinking it can't be that bad. Maybe this isn't true. Maybe this is God's church, and that these people are just bad.
It's not. Robert.
I think people often, when they're not part of a religious tradition or aren't part of a kind of social group, tend to judge and say, "Well, how could you do that?" I think as you were talking, I was thinking back to my own upbringing as being like Southern Baptist. When I say Southern Baptist, I'm not talking about the Southern Baptist now. I'm talking about that real old school Southern Baptist, where they thought if women showed their ankles, they were prostitutes. That kind of Southern Baptist that I was raised into, and kind of growing out of that. What advice would you give to people who maybe did come up with a upbringing, whether Mormon or any other religion, that's very restrictive, very judgmental, very kind of deleterious to their mental health going forward, as to how they can get out of that and kind of find their self and develop their own relationship with whatever deity or spirituality they find later on, but not being so restricted and so caught into what they were taught growing up?
I would tell them to think about what's important to them. When they stop caring about what other people think and they just start thinking about what makes sense to them and not what they were taught, it's going to be easier for them. And I think for me, finally not caring what people thought made it easy for me to leave, because Mormonism is huge, and that is culture. You're broken away from everyone. You're taken away from your family. You're taken away from your friends, because you're taught that this is the only true church, and that God, I believed what I was taught, that they had actual prophets and apostles that were walking this earth, that they were literally talking to God. Yes, I believe that. And so I believe what they taught me, which is this is the only true church, and all the other ones have some truth, but we have the authority. And so I believe that. So I would tell people, start thinking for yourself. Don't think about what your parents, your friends, your boyfriends, your kids taught you. What do you think? What makes sense to you? And do you need religion? Like, do you really need that? What do you need? What actually makes you happy? Not what your parents told you or how you were brought up or your community. Because remember, religion is a community. You lose a lot. I lost a lot when I left that church because I had lost before. My aunties, my uncles, they weren't happy of me joining the Mormon Church when I had a Methodist preacher uncle. So.
Scott.
Yeah. So, but what was it about Mormonism? Because you were in that church for 30 plus years. What was it about Mormonism that kept you there for so long, despite the racism? And secondly, by telling this story now, what are you hoping the future of Mormonism is, or do you even care?
That's a lot of questions. So first of all, I do care. What I care about is truth. What I care about is awareness. Every time something happened, I would try to question them, and they would shut me down and saying that I wasn't spiritual enough, that I didn't believe in God. And so that messes with you. You're thinking, wait a minute, it's a huge church. There are some Black people in it. Maybe it is me. Maybe it is me. I don't have parents with me talking to me about it. I don't have aunties, cousins, aunts, uncles. It's me using my own experiences trying to figure out, well, what's going on here? It has some truth because of this. But what drew me to Mormonism at the time, as an 18-year-old, if you're having a hard time growing up, you've got a lot of stuff going. San Antonio, it was high crime. There was a lot of things happening there. These people love bombed me. They told me that I was going to have a great life, that they're going to be there for me. They took me to dinner. They bought me. I'll admit that. They would take me places. I would spend a night at their house. It was great. Like, and they seemed to have great marriages. I didn't see any fighting and cussing, which I grew up around. So to me, I was like, maybe they're right. And, you know, it was like, I was telling my husband, it was like when I was going to the other churches and asked questions, I got in a lot of trouble. But when I went to this church and had questions, they answered them, except when it was about race. But I just thought when they tell me it's just something you don't understand right now, God's going to help you later. In the afterlife, you're going to understand everything, which is weird because if you think about it, if there was prophet and apostles, they should have had those answers. But I took it. And so what I would tell people now is that it's not a safe place for Black people. It just isn't.
Did you eventually marry somebody white? Or you married somebody Black?
I married somebody Black first. I married a Black man, and now I'm married to a white man.
All right. Well, church doesn't.
I do have a follow-up question.
Rebecca, literally, I'm out of time, but okay, 20 seconds, real quick.
Sure. So in 2012, when Mitch Romney became the Republican nominee, I noticed that it seemed like the Mormon Church was trying to do some rebranding. You were still in the church in 2012. Is that something that you noticed from the inside?
Yes, they tried, and I know that they even gave some money to the NAACP, which didn't sit right with me because I told them just because you gave money to the NAACP doesn't mean that you're supporting Black people. You're financially giving money to the NAACP. You should be helping the Black members within your congregation and address those issues.
Gotcha.
So yeah, there was a lot of rebranding.
All right. Chanel Achenbach, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.